Thank you guys. Thank you guys very much. We are actually live on YouTube. So today we actually are streaming live on YouTube. So it's quite exciting to have you, to have all of you here. yeah. So thank you very much for joining us, Nobantu from South Africa and George from Kenya. And today we are discussing about creative in communication and content development. I think something like that. So yeah, so looking forward to this discussion as we hopefully guys are going to come as we continue the discussion. So please, I think the first thing is kindly introduce yourselves, and we'll start with the lady.
Oh, okay, ladies first.
Yeah.
All right. Firstly, Calvin, thank you for having me here. I'm excited.
Yes.
Yes, so my name is Nobantu Modise from Johannesburg, South Africa. That's my village. Obviously, the whole continent is home for me. I have an online publication called Afrophilia. Afrophilia means to have a love for Africa and people of African descent. So I have the pleasure of sharing the beautiful stories from around the continent, photography, film, wellness, that kind of thing. And I also have a new publication called Ecophilia that's about the environment and sustainability, obviously very crucial for this point in time. And yes, and I have my media company called Afrophilia. And yes, excited to be talking about content development, because that's what I'm passionate about. So that's just a bit about me. And yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much, George.
Yo, Calvin,
Please introduce yourself.
yeah, my name is Agak. Yeah, I'm the founder of the Corporation, where we do copywriting, helping brands, get clients online. Yeah, that's what we basically do.
Okay. Although you need to make your sound, I think your sound is not very clear yet. So please work on it. Yeah, so that we can get you very clear. It's still not very clear.
Are you guys using another device apart from
Yeah,
the
we can be able to hear you, but I think it's not very clear as it's supposed to be. Yeah, so I'm sure you'll be able to work on it as we continue the conversation. So so Nubantu, maybe just to I will just start by, I mean, what are some of the things that you're doing, and what are some of the things that you're doing in South Africa? I mean, before we get into the actual conversation today.
Okay. In South Africa, well, Africa is still young. So still building some of our content partnerships with different people in film and photography. But it's half of the content is pretty much South African. The other half is from the rest of the continent, and obviously we want to add more stories from across the continent, which is why hanging out with someone like you is so important and so much fun. Because it adds to the Afrophilia story, the Afrophilia experience. And what we're up to is, I can't give out all the secrets at this point in time, but looking forward to a fun launch party. And you will release the details when we are closer to the time.
Okay.
But yeah, we've been working with some interesting organizations, and I'll get to share about that. Well, people should subscribe to Afrophilia, and you'll get the
Yeah,
information that's relevant.
definitely. George, what are you working on right now?
Yeah, right now, what doing is just get the people. Yeah. Due to COVID, we've taken a lot of break with clients. Mostly I work with clients for over 2 clients. And the COVID really backed us down. So we decided to go. We do say that we're taking a break, this sounds like a dream because one
Mm-hmm.
thing got to know things. So I've spent a lot of time with my hands and this is much right outside.
Okay. Um, yeah. So basically, I think we go straight to our conversation today, and my first question is, what do you understand by creative communication? When you talk about creative communication, what do you understand by creative communication?
That I have to read.
What do you understand by the term creative communication? And your sound is still not very clear. I think there must be something. Are you using your laptop or you using your phone? Maybe what you can do, you can just you can even remove your earphones and then you can just use yes, and then maybe yeah. So if you're using the laptop, then just speak on the laptop. I think maybe we might be able to hear you well. Or you're using the phone.
No, I'm not using the phone. I'm using the laptop.
Okay, so maybe yeah, just check your sound setting as well as we continue. I'm sure you'll be able to. I think there must be a little bit of sound setting, but apart from that, then we should be able to hear you. So yeah, so Nobantu, maybe you can just take us through what do you understand by creative communication.
Wow, that is a broad, that is a very broad um, sector entirely.
Yeah.
Um, what do you want us to look at? Do you want us to look at digital communication? Um,
let's start with digital. I mean, let's not even go to digital first. Let's start with the normal communication. I mean, like when you talk about creative communication, going to look at the mainstream media and the off stream, so like magazines and all this kind of stuff before even we jump into digital.
okay. So when we're talking about creative communications, we are in this talking about applying ourselves uniquely in different modes of communication. So, as you said, that could be magazine, that could be newspaper. And sometimes people feel like the print product is dead, but I don't think that's necessarily true. I think it's a question of understanding your audience and delivering the message that makes sense for this point in time and in a way that your clientele or your audience are comfortable with. You get what I mean?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
print product isn't dead. There are incredible print products. For example, Monocle in the United Kingdom, they have zero digital presence, but they have a very strong base to the extent that they are listed on the London Stock Exchange, right? At
Yes.
a
Yeah.
time saying that print is dead. You get what I mean? So
Mhm.
it's not necessarily um, it's about selecting the mode of communication that your consumer connects with well and bringing that mode into the 21st century. So that can be from the language in the content, that can be from the kind of visuals you use in the content, that can be
Mhm.
from, many different ways. It's like creativity is fun, kind of enjoy the process and let people connect to the fun that you're having in creating what it
Uh-huh.
is that so creative communications is about having fun, but it's also about being insightful and most importantly connecting with your audience. So I'd
Okay.
say starting point for me.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, George, you do a lot of, creative writing and all that. What do you understand by, the term creative communication in on organization aspect?
Um, I tie everything to value. Yeah. So it doesn't matter which form of communication you use. As our friend has said here to foster your audience, you have to understand and understand the medium of communication that you can relate to. Yeah? And then you
Mhm.
look into yourself, into your product, into your communication process, and find the value that you can add is life. Yeah. Yeah. So, for example, um, when you're doing when you're offering a product to the market, yeah, the work
Mm-hmm.
doesn't end with the product in the consumer's hand. Yeah, it goes
Mm-hmm.
further. You want to explain to this customer why this player, yeah, why this
Yeah.
player is trying to help you with this product and what are other benefits that come with it. So it's more of offering value to me than it's more on the customer side, on the banker side, than even on the side. What value can I provide? That is the first question that I ask for engagement.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's really key. I mean, he's talking about, like, what kind of value
Yeah.
you're able to offer. I think the next thing that I would love to ask is, I mean, what's the process? What is it like to, there's creative here, and there's also generating good content, and I think that's very key in communication. So let's talk about, let's talk about the aspect of the creative aspect. Like, yes, you want to communicate, but then how do you become very creative in terms of the steps that you need to take to communicate? And looking at more like an organization's setup. What are some of the steps that actually you need to take before you communicate a particular product or a particular service?
Yeah. The communication process begins with the marketing part. Um, you don't want to pretend that you are offering value without doing enough research to know what you are offering. Once you have done your thorough research, you have to do a lot of thorough research already. Try to put information out there. Find professional forums to join them, and then get the trust of those people who are actually trying to help you with something. Scale up quickly. All these different steps, yeah, and work them together. And I realized that I can't want this enough. That is when I now formulated. I've now decided the how. I've now decided the lifestyle. Now the next step is, how do I now relate this information in a manner that this target audience is now engaged. Yeah. First, this is beginning with my writing process, and then other sections now involve writing as easily and as readable as possible. So that when someone reads it from the beginning to the end, I they cannot see it. By the end of reading the product is article, after getting that value, and then the purpose of that article learning how to use it, then the benefits beyond reading your your website. That is when now the engagement is now kicking in.
Yeah.
That is the whole
So
process now.
yeah, I think I mean, your voice, you're still not very audible. I don't know what's wrong with your sound. There should be a problem with your sound that you really need to fix it up. But anyway, yeah, I mean, let's go to Nobantu. What are some of the processes of, of communication, of communicating a particular product?
I mean, unfortunately, I couldn't hear what George had to say. I'd have liked to at least see if there were parts that I could add uh, to what he was saying. But I'd say the first step, obviously, is understanding your audience.
Okay.
Because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, it doesn't matter which medium you're using. You have to create something that people can connect with, right? So the first stage
Exactly.
is research, very
Mm-hmm.
unglamorous. Very unglamorous, and sometimes you use old school methods, sometimes you use modern technology, but there are different
Mm-hmm.
tools, tricks in the trade to get to a point where you understand your audience.
Yeah.
Then from there, when you've had solid research, then you start getting to the ideation phase. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people skip the research, go straight to ideation, And the problem with that is sometimes people don't have your life experience. You get what I mean? Your life experience is valid, but not everyone can necessarily connect with it. So that's why the research part is to test the product. And what's most important about the product or the idea, whatever it is, what is most important about testing the concept is that you have to have an open mind. Because sometimes you're very crazy about your idea and no one else is. You get what I mean? So you have to keep an open mind so that you're not pouring resources into a dead project. So pay attention to the feedback that you're getting, whether you like the feedback or not. And then if you have to go back to the drawing board to regraft, replan, re-strategize, then do that. But once you paid attention to how people are or aren't connecting with the product, then you get into the other phases like, deciding what kind of budget you do and don't have to play with and how to implement the concept as best as you possibly can. That's when you also explore with which mediums will be best. The word medium just means that, a different platform. So maybe you thought this would be a wonderful digital idea. It may not necessarily be for the digital project you had in mind, and that's fine. We have so many options these days, so we really are spoiled for choice. So this is where you test on this platform, that platform, that platform. But also, I mean, we have basic understandings now because some platforms we've been using for years, if not months. If all this is new. So you know that, okay, if I'm on an Instagram, I need to be able to sell inspiration, right?
Yeah.
If you're using Instagram as your microblogging site. If you're on Facebook, you can play around with words, short form, long form, and incorporate some visuals. Videos do very well on Facebook. So that's something to keep in mind, something to work with. If you're building a site, should this be an interactive site, Are my audience at a stage where they want to be playing around with buttons and seeing things flying across their screen? If they're not, then keep it at a simple site. If they are excited by all that high-techy stuff, then go to town with it. You get what I mean? So there's a lot of exploration in the creative process, and one of the most important qualities to have is you have to be resilient. Because sometimes your ideas. And we say never get too attached to an idea. Sometimes your ideas will be tested and they'll fail. You have to move on, So your internal rate of recovery from disappointment, it has to be really quick, So it doesn't matter, drop it, move to the next. Drop it, move to the next. Don't. If your heart is too much in it, you will have to see a psychologist, like permanently. So it is correct. It is fun, creativity. Fun being in this creative kind of world, but you do have to have thick skin. You do have to have patience, because sometimes you look online, this guy's got however many 100,000 followers. They've been at it for years. You get what I mean?
Exactly.
You can't start today and expect the whole world to follow you and then have a nervous breakdown because the whole world is not following you overnight, So yes, patience, resilience, keep testing, keep trying. So those are some of the phases involved in the content creation process.
Okay, George, would you like to add something on what Nobantu has said?
She's really dissected everything from creation to distribution.
It's not.
Oh, you're getting what I'm saying right now, right?
We're almost getting you. I don't know why. Yeah, just a bit. Okay, try more.
I'm trying to do this. I don't know why you didn't get it.
Just a bit, although it's quite far. I don't know what is wrong with the Anyway.
Can I have a minute and try to so that I will come back?
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe
Okay. So yeah, I mean, as we wait for George to come back, I think we can just have this conversation. Yeah. So I mean, looking at what you said in the process of communication and all that. So I think we want to go into the next segment of more like digital. Digital communication. And before we go towards that, I think let's get back to content. Like, how do you develop a content for either maybe your online site? Like, how do you develop appropriate content? Yes, you've talked about research and all that, but how do you really understand that? I mean, how do you really know that your research is appropriate?
Oh, very good question. You have to find a pool of people who are in the audience that you want to reach. This is if you are like from scratch, never done this before, you're jumping in, which is a lot of people. Then you want to find a pool of people who are in that target audience that you have after you've done your research, etc. And then show them different demos, different formats, different ways of communicating your message. And from there, pay attention to the impressions that you get,
Yeah.
And it's not always about the likes, etc. It is about, ask people questions like, what did you connect with more? What spoke to you? And sometimes you won't even have to ask that. They will tell you themselves. These days, people have the option of consuming content in different ways, so they know who they are. They know what they like. So they actually, you'll be surprised by how quickly people can tell you, I don't really like that. Why don't you try that?
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. People have strong opinions, So
Yeah.
so pay attention to that. But yes, find a pool of people who are in the audience that you're interested in connecting with, and pay attention to the impressions that they give you.
I mean, and things like color, like you have different colors, and you want to, for example, develop a website, or you want to develop maybe. There's always a combination of color. Is this something that you should get maybe from audience? Or it's just like, I love blue and I want to go blue.
It's got to be a bit of a balance, I I helped someone develop their online magazine recently, and one thing I told them is that as soon as you start showing people your product, you will encounter people who have a vision for you, right?
Yeah.
So there is a part of the equation where you have to make your mind up about what speaks to you, and what your values, the visuals, the colors, etc., that communicate your values. There is such a thing as color psychology. You get what I mean? So it's something looking up to, seeing which colors people resonate with. Sometimes pay attention to the Pantones of the year, if that's your thing,
Yeah.
And then develop the picture according to the vision that you have, because you know the end goal. You know where this is, what this is going to become. And so paying attention to impressions doesn't mean you bend all the way backwards to give everyone what they want now. You get what I mean? Because part of the process is acclimatizing people to the vision that you have, So there has to be that balance between being clear about who you are, what your identity is. And of course, it's important to be distinctive, because sometimes people will tell you what they like, because maybe they're kind of steering you in the direction to be another version of, say, another magazine or another blog, because that's all.
Because that's, maybe they love it, like they pass through maybe some website or some blog, and they love it, so they want to actually direct you to that particular direction.
Yeah, because that's what they know, right? And you're introducing something new, so you do have to have a measure of patience to gradually introduce people to who you are, what's unique about your tone and your message, etc. And that's when stuff like your content plan is very important. So some people will get it all at once. I've had that. People who've looked at my magazine, I really be like, oh yeah, I get that. This is why the content needs a magazine like this. I can see where you're going with it. And some people will need that gradual introduction. So that's back into having patience and having sort of a thick skin, you know, of acknowledging that it will take time for some people to get it, and that's okay. That's why you are the one introducing the vision.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's quite, it's quite good to look at that point in terms of, what you want vis-a-vis what your clients want.
Yeah.
And I think that's sometimes it also makes you to think, do you want to go online or do you want to go uh, like communicate more offline? So for example, let's talk about, a bit of publishing and a bit of online magazine versus the normal magazine. Right now you're working on an online magazine. What do you really feel there's a more impact of doing an online magazine than doing a physical magazine? Or would you suggest somebody do like concurrently, like the online and the offline?
Okay. It depends, one, on your location and your audience, you know. For Africa, especially reaching a young audience, you want to be online, right? For sometimes simple things like logistics, there are some areas where the printing is much more expensive, and there's some areas where the logistics would be a nightmare because maybe the roads are not good. So for your product to reach that audience in the middle of goodness knows where can be a bit more of a hassle, right? Things like the fuel price also contribute to the expense of getting your product out there. So in Africa, if you're young, if you have no funding, or if you're self-funded or limited funding, then digital platform is the way to begin. Also because a lot of people are accessing these things on their phones, right? So, but you have the like older generation, and well, okay, I wouldn't say I'm old, but I like feeling paper. And hey, George is back.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
And we can hear
Yes, we can hear you actually now, George. Welcome back.
That's great.
Thanks, George.
Yeah, okay.
Good. Yeah, we're coming back to you. So, Nobantu, just continue, and then we'll go to George next.
Okay, so George, we're talking about the difference between choosing print versus a digital product. So, so yes, the print is quite expensive, but the advantages of print are you can play around with the paper types in the reader experience, the visuals, you can make the fold outs, you can put texture so that people can actually feel something special when they're actually touching your product. You can create an entire experience. So that's why I also like in my publishing business, I like working with printed products as well. But obviously with digital, you can have video, you can add podcasts, you can add, motion picture. Each side has their own advantages. So I'd say it depends on your budget, and it depends on the location and the audience that you're trying to reach. What speaks to them, what doesn't speak to them.
Exactly. George, can you be able to add something on that aspect as well?
Yeah. I personally, I think I use printing when I have to, because printing can be quite limiting, especially when you are still testing your product. You are in the initial stages of testing. When you're testing, you are bound to make a lot of corrections. Now think of situations when you have printed your stuff and there is an error and you have to go back. It can be very, very, very costly. Another advantage of digital is that it's very easy to share. Yeah, it's sharing. You produce a marketing message today. It hits. Let's say you're using Facebook. You can even sponsor it. Yeah, you can even sponsor your message and make a short video and then sponsor it, and then within a short time it reach quite a large number.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's really an important point there. About going digital versus the main print in terms of the corrections that you need to make. The feel in terms of magazine, and I like what you said about the feel. Like some people like touching stuff, so I would like to see a physical magazine than like, hey, this is our online magazine. So I think that's a very good point there. So I mean, on the same, looking at the creative aspect in terms of either in terms of font, in terms of line, in terms of pages, and all that kind of stuff. What are some of the advice I can be able to give, especially when you're publishing, the physical magazine? What are some of the things that you need in terms of either even the pages, how many numbers? What are some of the things that you can actually advise? I think we'll start with Nobantu.
Wow, where to begin? I'd say if you can, invest in a very good designer, because designing for publications is not for everyone. And I've learned that
Mm-hmm.
some people, just because someone makes good logos,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean they'll necessarily be very good with layout and
Mm-hmm.
design in a publication, because it requires two different, well, ways of thinking and creative expression. For
Mm-hmm.
publication, you have to be meticulous.
Yeah.
Um, the alignment of the words, the spacing between the pictures and the words, all these things matter. You're hearing this now and you're thinking, really? No, it really matters. You get what I mean? So some
Yeah.
designers don't have the patience for that kind of work. And you also have to mix fonts quite a lot. I recommend that, so it creates a bit more dynamism, a bit of excitement in the experience. And so some designers are not necessarily that good at mixing font, but taking your idea and translating that into a logo or an image,
Mm-hmm.
yes, you get what I mean. So if you can invest in a very good designer, number one piece of advice.
Okay. So yeah, I think that's what do you think, George, in terms of the design? I mean, you do a lot of design, and then I think we'll also talk about copywriting as well. But I mean, give us some aspect in terms of design.
I don't do a lot of designs, but I work with designers. Yeah,
Yes.
and
I mean, you communicate to them.
what I do is first I consider the message and different mediums by which it can be spread around. Yeah. For example,
Mm-hmm.
there's a time there's this a message that needs infographics. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
if I want, if I produce this detailed step by step process, yeah, then I'd rather go for infographics than a huge printed booklet, because I find the infographic, you give even the designer, yeah, the room to play with his creativity and stuff. But even the reader who's gonna read this thing is gonna find it very easier to grasp. You look at an
Mm-hmm.
infographic content, you can tell just by looking at the infographic.
Okay.
This is now the end. Yeah. So before you, even after deciding that I'm going great, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you should consider the kind of message, the kind of content that you are spreading. It might fit um, just a different kind of good media. Yeah? Sometimes you
Mm-hmm.
just want a simple poster. Sometimes you want a detailed ebook. Sometimes you just want
Mm-hmm.
infographic has different purposes. That is
Yeah.
one. Secondly, it comes back to budget.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
getting me now, yeah? It
Yes.
comes back to budget.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
you just want to do everything. You want to do the infographics. You still want to do the short videos maybe on Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
digital people stuff. But still, you have this audience that wants to sit down and process all this information. Well, so for them, make a detailed
Mm-hmm.
others who just want to browse and do computer and stuff, find a better medium, maybe a copyright.
Okay. I think your sound is also not still not very clear. But I mean, I think I can be able to get some point here. I think it's quite
Yeah.
not clear still. Yeah,
So if
but
you are following,
yes, please. Yeah, I think it was not very clear as well. But anyway, it's fine. I think Eddie's actually, and I think that's something that we can actually have a little discussion. I'm sure you can be able to see that Eddie's saying, I kind of think we should adopt more digital magazine than the physical magazine, as it helps reduce the cost of production and can be accessed from everywhere. So, I mean, I would like us to probably discuss how do you bring that mindset of digital magazine, in terms of even access, in terms of even buying, purchase, because most people are not used to buying digital, like digital magazine or something like that. uh, so how do you bring that culture so that people actually can purchase a digital magazine?
I think it could. Should I go first or George?
Please, yeah,
Okay.
go for
So
it, yeah.
in terms of the buying culture, the first thing is using tools like Instagram, because with Instagram you can say click on the picture and that leads you to purchase. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
And that also brings the next most important part, which is reliable and safe online platforms that you can purchase from. So some people live in a cash is king society. They're not trying to hear anything but debit cards, credit cards, etc. So if people have assurance that whatever payment platform you're using is secure, then you are
Mhm.
likely to get paying customers, or maybe
Yeah.
even just, why not use, well, in South Africa we have stuff like e-wallets, or
Mhm.
there's that kind of thing. If there's a way of incorporating some of these technologies that you trust to purchase, then I think that's one way to go. In terms of the digital culture, then that's also a question of putting forward the kind of publication that someone actually wants to buy.
Yeah, exactly.
That's I think the most important part, um, because if you're just another magazine, nah. No one's gonna have that interest. So creating something that people want to buy, people want to hear from regularly. So that
Mhm.
goes into making an effort with the visuals and all that. So for example, Afrophilia is still growing, Ecophilia, which is the
Mhm.
one building about sustainability and then the environment.
Mhm.
Um, Even though there are new platforms, I still put my best foot forward. I'm not thinking, oh, there's only 50 people following. Forget it. Those 50 people are like kings to me. They're
Yeah,
important. They believe in this product. I'm not letting them down, okay? Um,
exactly. Yeah.
they had the foresight to believe in this product first. So I'd say always put your best foot forward, even if you only have 50 followers, because that's how you go from 50 to 100, 100 to 150, and so on and so forth. So investing as wisely as you can in using a good content platform, a good platform for the actual magazine itself. Very important. If you have the budget, buy premium stock images, high
Mhm.
quality stock images, or create content partnerships where you can access high quality stock images. Put that on your website. When
Yeah,
you've built this not just expectation, but this culture that your
yeah,
publication is good quality. There's thought in this publication. It's well put together. That's how you build respect with your audience. And if
exactly.
people respect your product, they will be willing to pay for your product. So it requires a lot of care. It's
Mhm.
time consuming. I'm sure George can tell you that. But in the end, that's the only way to go.
Yeah, and which I think it's a good thing. I mean, in terms of having the right content, and I think this is something I think we've discussed. What I'm just about to ask, I think we've already discussed it, but looking at how do you build that community of people actually who like content. I mean, I look at publication as music. Once you sing a particular music, you generate an audience. That people who love your music, love you as a person. They'll love your new music and all that. So when it comes to writing, how do you develop that kind of trust in terms of people continuously wanting to come and actually consume your content?
Mm. George, you
Um,
the
uh,
author. You want to go for
Yeah,
this
George,
first?
George,
okay,
go first.
yeah, okay. When it comes to writing, the first thing that you wanna think about is you want to write content that someone is already looking. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you write something that people are already looking for, when it
Uh-huh.
lands, yeah, it means you created a product that someone wanted, that is useful for the community that you are getting to them. What
Yeah.
I do mostly, this is my method, is to write a lot of response articles.
Mm-hmm.
I like a lot of response content. Whenever I go to Reddit, I look at the questions that people are asking. I also use keyword research tools just to know the
Mm-hmm.
kind of content that people are looking for. And apart from what people are looking for, I also look at what is already written. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to be creating a lot of content that is not so useful, that is already there. So I look for what the people want and what the competitor has provided. Yeah. And move in deep. The thing is, once I have read what the competitor has written, the question is, what has he given out, and what
Mm-hmm.
can I add on top of what they've given? Then do my research and write an article that is of use to the person who is looking for it. So when you do this the first time, you don't get as much traffic because maybe the search volume isn't that big, but you continue. You write another response article, you write another, you write another, you write another, till maybe you are at 40 articles that are just
Mm-hmm.
giving value. So before you look sell, maybe you are thinking, when you are talking about changing the culture, when people buying online magazines. Before you can think of
Mm-hmm.
creating a magazine for them to buy, you just have to give them the value. Create as much response content as possible so that apart from just solving their problems, you are building your reputation. Yeah?
Okay.
they, they begin seeing you they begin seeing you as a professional. So that when you now launch a magazine that you now expect to sell, you have built a trust, you have built a reputation, and they believe that whatever you're going to give them, if all this valuable content you've been giving for free, and if you are selling this one, that's what it will be worth. And there you go.
Oh, okay. I mean, Nobantu, what can you be able to add?
I'd say for me, I think the most important thing, especially if you see yourself writing in the long term, is
Yeah.
you have to find your voice, you know,
Mhm.
your special style of writing, your special signature that's unique to you. And I
Mm-hmm.
believe it's, I may write a lot, George may also be a published author, but you'll find that, and we can agree on so many things, but you'll find that when you look at how we write and how we communicate, so different.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
we're living at a time where people want to hear different voices. They want to hear voices from their region, from their community, etc. So trying to replicate something that you hear in the United Kingdom or United States, I wouldn't advise that. So find your unique voice as a writer, and that's an internal and very personal journey. And
Okay.
but I think when you found your voice, you'll find people who connect to that. I like it when I read something and I'm like, yeah, they make a very valid point. Or when I read something and it makes me laugh, or I read something and I start to sweat out of my eyeballs. You get what I mean? That's what I like when I see some soul in what I'm reading. I see that
Okay.
there's thought that's gone into what I'm reading. So
Mm-hmm.
finding your voice as a writer, very important. And then look at what George was saying, obviously the keyword tools, do the search, what people are looking for. But I think as African youth, we have a very special advantage in that We're pretty much what I say this quite often. We're the first generation who can communicate who we are, what we like, how we want to
Yeah.
be related to. These are conversations that haven't really happened in the media space. So we have an advantage in that there's so many topics in Africa that are still unexplored. And it's about you looking around you and saying, who is not being well represented in media? What can I do about it? And build from there. So definitely do the keyword searches and write content that people are looking for, but also pay attention to what they don't have, because there's some things people don't know that they're looking for them. You get what I mean? I look at sometimes the major international fashion publications, and they're publishing, this is avant-garde, this is so different, etc. They keep looking for different, and I feel like they've been looking for African, they just don't know it, because we have so much color, we have so much texture, we have so many, I mean, we're the most culturally diverse continent in the world, so we
Yeah.
have so much that the world doesn't know it's been looking for. So also just pay attention to what we have that they don't have, and find a way of communicating that locally, internationally. And that's the advantage of digital. You can target your content to reach a specific um, audience
Yeah.
internationally. That's what you're after. So really, African youth, we have so much that we can play with, you
Yeah,
know?
it's true. I mean, and I think that's also even come to, I mean, like for people who are even video blogging, like video bloggers, you
Yeah,
have to look for like a particular niche, that you'd love, like myself, I just like discussing about business and such kind of stuff. So I think also it's both passion and also probably consistent as well.
yeah,
And I think that should be one next thing. I mean, writing is not easy as recording videos or singing or something like that. How do you remain constant in writing and relevancy? How do you stay sober, writing all through? George, how do you stay sober writing?
I don't think so. That's not me.
George, how do you stay sober?
Um, 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 what keeps me grounded is the entire process. Yeah.
Mhm.
When you begin a project, like I'm a copywriter, I write for businesses, but I also have a blog of my own where I blog about marriage. What I'm very passionate about it, and both from growing, from growing to consumption to the medical bit and everything. I'm very passionate about
Mhm.
cannabis. I have my personal blog where I just share content about cannabis and everything. One thing that keeps me grounded, my tagline is to my site is you are go to cannabis resource, and, and,
Mhm.
and, and that's my dream. I want that someday when you want to look anything about cannabis and to run a search on Google, it brings you to me. It brings you to my website. So that keeps me grinding every single time. Another
Mhm.
thing is you're right. They do get feedback. Yeah. Sometimes I just go back to read my blog, update them, and find new content, updates, and everything. But then people fail to take comments and suggestions serious. That is where I
Okay.
also concentrate. I just go back to my content and read the messages that people need. I wanted to begin um, growing, yeah, but I've got this and this and this and this, but I couldn't just get a tent that could work for me. Then I say, okay, people want to hear me, but they can't even know the right concept and they use forever terms or which other price is there. So I get down and do that research and provide them with content that they need. Sometimes it's not even something that I think a lot of people would be looking for. But just because there's one person who really needs this information, I assume that there might be another and another and another. And
Okay.
you end up creating a lot of green content, green content that just light more. When people come, I wanted this, but if the right place to find it, it's my blog. That's basically why.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. What can you be able to add? Can you add something, Nobantu?
It's not easy being consistent with writing. Or actually, I mean, even video guys can say the same thing because you have to edit and so on and so forth. Um, it's, I mean, what George said, it's one of the reasons why I also started Ecophilia,
Mhm.
if your mind is always doing the same thing over and over again, it gets dull, it
Mhm.
gets exhausting. So add some variety, so that
Okay.
it's stimulating for you. Fortunately, there's also things like content schedulers. So you can write your content in advance, plan maybe a weekend, kind of go away, do a bit of writing, and then schedule your content to go out um, periodically. So that could help you stay consistent. But I think it's a hugely internal thing, So managing things like your mental health, staying in stimulating environment, being in company of good friends, etc. That helps you stay alive and
Yeah.
keep those juices flowing. So yeah, add some variety into your lifestyle and into the writing process. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's really good. I mean, in terms of adding variety and all that, and obviously keep on the lane. You should not be like you write about. I mean, I mean, you write about, for example, maybe ecophilia. You write about environment and all that, but then tomorrow you're going to write about politics. Do you feel that you might lose your readers when you actually jump from one topic to the other, or how can you actually marry the different topics? And I know George also is is a good writer as well, because he's written a few poems. I mean, also I'm sure he's working on a book. So how do you jump from one particular content to the other without actually losing your audience or losing your readers?
Firstly, it's a muscle that you build. The
Hmm.
more you're into writing, also sometimes the more you develop your fluency, and you also realize what um, mediums of writing are and aren't for you. And it's very
Okay.
important to have that honest internal conversation. I don't write about politics, and I have many reasons for that. I feel like politics in Africa, we just keep running around the same circle over and over again. So, not for me, right?
Uh,
And in Afrophilia, so for example, with a publication like Afrophilia, there are different content sections, but they still fall within the same sphere. So right now, it's still currently a largely cultural experience. Now, there's music, there's film, there's entertainment, um,
mhm.
culture, and then there's wellness. All these things are interlinked. You get what I mean? So you're not going to
Yeah.
lose your audience because they are interlinked. Um,
Mhm.
it's only when you are leaping from something that's vastly different to another, you have to have the skill for that. If you don't, phone a friend. Uh, but I'll say that if you want to have some variety, um, look into writing for things that are interconnected. I think that's
Okay.
the easiest way. But as writers, you build the muscle to dive from this to that to this to that. I don't know what George feels about that, but that's how I feel.
George, what do you feel about that? Like jumping from one story to the other, but still actually keeping your narrative quite clear.
It's a balance between hustle and the message and the drive. Yeah. So
Hmm.
sometimes because I write for different industries, I get work that I can't handle. Yeah? Like there was this time that I got a job at a plant that is dealing with drugs, and
Hmm.
it was a metal press casting. I could understand and I do writing. Luckily, I have a team.
Mm-hmm.
I send it to the guy who can write it, write it, come back and then edit it and edit other stuff and send to the client. They have a revision, they send back and then do back and forth. But it depends on the level of harmony that you have within yourself. Like right now, for me, I have we have the situation where we do the commercial writing. Yeah, we do the commercial
Mm-hmm.
writing. But what I mostly do and enjoy doing so much is writing about kind of that I can't assign to someone. Doesn't matter the level of up and down writing. Writing. Yeah. So we also talk about poetry. Poetry. I published my first book in 2015. I was
Mm-hmm.
writing poetry at the point. It was just waiting to be
I
published.
don't know why we can't hear you very well now.
It's gone softer.
I have to move closer to the screen. Like right now.
Yes.
But when I move closer, I don't like how I look in the thing.
No, it's fine. You
Ah,
look great. You look great.
Lord of mercy, have mercy. Um, like I was telling you about poetry, I published my first book in 2017, and ever since I have manuscripts that are ready for publication. But the poetry just seems to be a different process. Poetry is spontaneity. Yeah, it's not spontaneity. It's nothing like it's not like I ever sit down and say today I want to write this poem and it has to be this poem and it has to end this. So it's just
Mm-hmm.
employing some spontaneity into your life. So
Mm-hmm.
it's write them, but for the work, it's mostly research. So for the commercial writing and for my blog, I have to do a lot of research into that kind of stuff. But for poetry, just observing and employing some spontaneity. And
Okay. Um, Nobantu, I mean, looking at African form of writing. I mean, we have amazing African writers.
Yeah.
Like Chinua Achebe. We have Ngugi wa Thiong'o. I mean, people who write, and many obviously South African writers as well, who really write a lot of good African stories.
Yeah.
How do you think the young people should actually do more in that particular space? Because we don't see a lot of young people actually writing those very nice books that we used to have a few years back. How can we cultivate that kind of culture of writing in young Africans today?
I think the struggle where it comes to young writers and African writers hasn't necessarily been in interest as much as it has been in understanding publishing and having
Mm-hmm.
access to good publishers. Because I've encountered a lot of people say, "Hey, I've got this book. I'd like you to please, publish it or give me advice. What do I do? What are the next steps, so on and so forth." So historically, a lot of youth, especially Black youth, haven't had access to publishers or haven't had an understanding of how that relationship works, and how they can take advantage of it. And some of it isn't necessarily because publishers are not interested. It takes a lot of time to get a book done. From reviewing the manuscript to coaching your writer through the process to the proofreading, multiple rounds of proofreading, by the way, the design, it all takes a lot of time. So every publisher can only do so many books, at a time. So just because a publisher has said no, doesn't mean that your book is not good. I remember I was with a client once and I told him that the books that you see in bookstores are not necessarily the best books that are out there. Those are just books that a publisher thinks are going to sell well at that particular point in time or for whatever reason. You get what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
um, it is about looking out for publishers. I'm here, George is here, um, and distilling what your story is very clearly, because this is where a number of people kind of falter when it comes to pitching your story, your manuscript, your idea, and all of that. Um, but if you're starting, you want to publish a book eventually, I'd say start with short stories, because there
Mm-hmm.
are publishers who are publishing anthologies. You can publish a short story, put it online, sell it on Google Books, that kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, the shorter stories, the smaller books also sell at a low price. You're not asking people for too much. Um, it's not a major production.
Yeah.
Obviously, if your name is on it, you want to put out the best possible thing you can. So I'm not saying just write whatever and put it out there, but look out for short story things, like short
Uh-huh.
story Africa, different platforms where they're publishing anthologies. It can be poetry, or that kind of thing. Look out for writers forums, because they also
Mm-hmm.
post a lot of information on different funders, competitions, residencies, writing residencies, um, and learn, like, what does it take to get into a writer's residency. um,
Mm-hmm.
what does it take to get my book published, and what is the process of getting the book published, and then get a sense for what you do and don't have the stamina for. So I've seen people have this wonderful book idea, and they drop out, part of the way through, because they're like, yo, this is so much time. They thought they could rock up with their manuscript, put it on someone else to figure out how to make the magic happen, and then,
Mm-hmm.
they run off into the sunset like J.K. Rowling as a billionaire. It doesn't work like that. It is
Exactly.
a
Yeah.
process. You have to be invested, and you have to be present. So if you're given constructive criticism, you take that on board. But yeah, sorry, I've kind of gone the long way to say you have to have stamina for writing. It's not
Mm-hmm.
easy. I know people, you pick up a book, it looks easy. It's not easy, and it takes patience, and you have to be willing to ride the distance.
Okay. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I think we're almost actually finishing up, and yeah, we're almost finishing up. So I think my last question would be, I mean, to George and to yourself.
Before
George,
you
did you want to
ask,
say something?
to ask something on as, I'm gonna compare the other generation.
Oh,
I think we are having really good writers right now. Yeah, I'd
Mm-hmm.
like to think um, we we have more writers now than we did,
yeah.
but I think times have changed. Times have changed in regards to different formats of writing and platforms
Yeah.
that come out. For example, let's look at I want to give you a very good comparison. Yeah? Someone spends a year or two writing a novel. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Someone spends a year or two writing a novel, and then when the novel is done, he wants to sell it. Let's say $10. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and at the beginning, this is just at the ideation stage. You haven't
Yes.
got publisher, so you have to write this and keep knocking publishers doors. And I want to publish this. And
Mm-hmm.
while you as the writer is so thrilled and so enthusiastic about this business of writing, the publisher is just looking, can you monetize? That is that is why it begins and it ends with a need for money. This is why you find that even, even for people who write poetry like me, I have a lot of manuscripts. But if I think of writing a book, going the self-publishing way, marketing it, going to friends, selling it here and there. Now,
Mm-hmm.
all that. I'm a copywriter. If even if you're thinking about writing as a hustle, you want to put money to it. I can write a book and wait and well, I can sit here and write an within um, 3 hours. Uh, Just an article. So
Mhm.
other platforms of writing have come up, and we just need to make livelihood, make more money, priorities have now changed priorities. Now you think instead of waiting for 1 year to write a full book,
Yeah.
this kind of one, this business, this move to the next. Another
Mhm.
bit, even if you stick to the creative writing bit, you want to right now people have this and you go to other people's websites and they develop themselves as Facebook
Mhm.
writing something that you have getting followers, getting getting all that information you have to get. I know, right? Because boom, everything happens. I think that is
Yeah.
why we like didn't have a lot of money. Because we didn't have a lot of money. But unlike in the past when we had one option of writing a book and waiting for a publisher. Right now there are so many avenues to do
Mm.
that is
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, the last question, I think, as we put it to an end, uh, I mean, Nobantu, what advice can you give to probably upcoming creative writer, or an upcoming content developer? You know, because content is also very key. I mean, there's companies that actually will just employ you to actually generate content for them, either for marketing or for whatever aspect. What advice would you actually give them in terms of, so number one, maybe let's start with an upcoming either blogger or writer, and then probably somebody who want to get into content business.
Mhm. Number one, always put your best foot forward. You know, don't take that, this is just another article mentality, because especially in the digital age, you never know who's going to read your work. I've also learned that with Afrophilia. I mean, you read Afrophilia. That's how you were like, whoa, 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 I need to speak to
Yeah,
her. And here
yeah,
we are.
yeah.
So always put your best foot forward. That's one. And number two, do proper research on rates.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you risk underselling yourself in a huge way. And writing is very strenuous work. It's long-term work. George has also mentioned that too. And so if you're not sitting on proper financial footing, it becomes an incredibly stressful and painful situation, which it shouldn't be, you know? And then the third thing is keep records of everything. So you go to a meeting with a client, take minutes. You may feel like,
Mm-hmm.
buddies, we pals. No, 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 no. Take minutes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, because unfortunately, I hate to say it, you know, the corporate, I mean, the creative industry, and sometimes when corporates interact with creators, they can be that shark behavior where people, you know, try to take advantage of you. So take meetings, keep records of things, send invoices on time, you know, and keep that boundary, you know, be friendly, be approachable. People like to do business with people that they like, but definitely have boundaries, you know, otherwise you will experience people taking advantage of you, you know. When you're stepping out as an individual, as a freelancer, people will be like, oh, she doesn't have a legal team behind her. She doesn't have an HR team behind her, you know? So we can, you know, we can push this one around. So that's why I insist on taking records and having
Mm-hmm.
some proper professional boundaries. It's so important. So as much as you are a writer, and maybe your stuff is a bit emotional and you may be very emotionally invested in your project, you do have to think very like in a kind of a corporate and professional manner, and you have to carry
Exactly.
it that way. It's so crucial. And yes, don't be afraid to ask for exactly what you want, you know. Otherwise, it becomes a very painful experience. So it's more than one, but they're very important ones that,
Yeah, I think that's cool. George, what can you be able to add?
Um, the most important is to get your name out there, and while doing that, don't be afraid to begin to do some tasks. Um, for a writer, the best way is to get your name out there is to look for self-blogging opportunities. If you find a blog that is doing so well, have followers, and has good reviews, write to the people. Tell them, hey, I'm interested. I have this idea of a best blog.
Mm-hmm.
Would you accommodate? If they say no, leave it a night. But the best thing is to try to get your name in different publications, so that when you now embark on monetizing your work, you have proof, yeah, that you can do this. It's like building an online portfolio, but it goes way beyond that. It now demonstrates your skills as a writer. Um, let's say you teach marketing posts, yeah, or you teach just any other reputable magazine or online publication. Get your name out there. And as Shia said, think long term. Think long term. Don't just think of yourself as a writer for hire.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Think long term. Because when you think
think
long
long
term,
term.
Mm-hmm.
everything adds up. Everything adds up. If you write an article today and it just doesn't pay you, but it goes a long way in they add up, they add up, they add up, they add up. You have 5 sites you can send sites links to as well. Above all else,
Okay.
just
Okay. I think that's cool. Yeah, thank you guys. It was really nice having you guys around, and yeah, I'm sure we will be doing this more often. So definitely next time, probably in the course of next month, I would actually love to invite you guys again, and we're going to do something probably more around creative, around all that kind of stuff. So I think that's cool.
Yay! That would
all
be
right.
really cool.
So maybe just 1 second, maybe you can just say maybe your site, how people can be able to reach you. We'll start with Nobantu.
Okay, so my Twitter is at Nobantu Modise. My magazine is Afrophilia, AFROPHILIA.com, and Ecophilia, which is loading under construction, is ecophilia.life, LIFE. And
Mhm.
yes, that's how you can reach me. And let me know if you've got exciting content, from your part of Africa. Then yeah, definitely drop me a line. I'm all about that.
Okay, that's nice. What about you, Judge? How can somebody be
You
able to
can
reach you?
you can find me on Facebook. Quite quite Facebook, and then on Twitter at Twitter Live.
Mhm.
Um, for my blog, for my blog, you can find me. You can find my blog. Read the mania for 20. Read the mania for 20. I hope you love talking about marijuana too. So that's that's the place to be. And if you have some work, or you want guidance on writing some good stuff, then find me as well.
Okay. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for coming through. Thank you guys. It was really nice. I think the conversation was quite good. And looking forward to having you guys. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.